You're listening to the Hunt Suburbia podcast. I'm your host, Pat Guyette. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow. Quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my bow. All right, we've got a great podcast coming up, but first, just a couple of announcements on Huntstock. Huntstock, New York is July 11th through the 13th at Vernon National Shooting Preserve, and Huntstock, Massachusetts is August 8th through the 10th at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts. The New York show, first one on the list. We've got a great show planned out. We'll have live shooting opportunities. You can shoot Ruger rifles at the rifle range for free. They'll be bringing all the ammo, a bunch of different types of guns, and you can go and test them out all for free right at the New York show. You can also shoot trap, clay. You can learn to shoot trap if you haven't done that before. Vernon National Shooting Preserve has some great opportunities there. So it is an awesome shooting show, which you won't be able to do at the Massachusetts event. So if you want to check out some of those experiences, make sure you come to the New York event. A couple seminar speakers that will be in New York, but not Massachusetts. Joe Donito, Jim Massett, they'll be only in New York this year. Randy Flannery, only in New York this year. And there may be a couple others that we are still waiting on confirmation on that will only be at the New York show. So you want to see those guys, make sure you come out to the New York event. In Massachusetts, some speakers that will only be there and not in New York. Rick Labby, he'll be there. He won't be at the New York event. You want to see him, come to the Massachusetts show. And of course, Dan Infalt, John Eberhardt, and Barry Wenzel. They will be at the Massachusetts event and not the New York show. So I encourage people to check out both events. There's something for everybody at each event. Each event has its own kind of feel to it and their own uniqueness, both from the venues and what we offer at the event. So 2 totally different shows. We hope to see a lot of you at both of them. First Responder Friday. This is something new that we're doing this year to celebrate and honor our first responders. That's military, veterans, police, fire, and EMS. On Friday, if you are a first responder, the first 100 first responders that check in will get a free meal ticket and a free drink ticket on us. You just have to show proof that you're a first responder, and we will get you guys your free meal ticket and free drink ticket on Huntstock. Also, every first responder that comes on Friday, whether you're not the first 100, you're the second 300. If we have 400 first responders on Friday, everybody that shows up will get a special blue raffle ticket, which will get you entered into an exclusive prize pool only available for first responders. There will be some great prizes in there. For the Massachusetts show, we just got a $1,500 deer hunt donated to that, and we're working on other prizes. If you want to contribute a prize to that special pool, send me an email, huntsuburbia@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that we get your special prize for first responders into that drawing on Friday. So that's another new promotion we're running this year that we're super excited about. There's all kinds of other stuff that's going to be happening, new sponsors coming in, new seminar speakers, some new demonstrations and things like that. You'll be able to get all of that info at www.huntstockevents.com. That's where you can get your online tickets. Please get your tickets online if you can. If you know you're coming to the show, get your tickets now because it helps us plan for everything. It helps us project how many people will be there, and it helps us come up with contingency plans, things like that. If we're going to have overflow parking, if it looks like it's going to be a lot bigger than it was the year before, we can plan out ahead of time to make the experience as smooth as possible. So getting your tickets online helps us, but we will have tickets available at the door. We will not turn anybody away at either event. We hope to see you at Huntstock, New York, in Vernon Center, New York, at Vernon National Shooting Preserve, July 11th through the 13th, and at Huntstock, Massachusetts, at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts. Going to be another great year. We can't wait. It's coming up quick. Now, let's get into this great podcast. All right, this podcast is a seminar delivered by Rodney Elmer from Huntstock, New York, last year, 2024, and it is called the Deer Season Playbook. So Rodney delivers great seminars. He's a good teacher, and there's a lot of great info in this seminar. You can catch his seminars in New York and Massachusetts this year. And this is, he always changes up his subjects, so he'll have something new this year. But without further ado, here is Rodney's great seminar from last year's Huntstock, New York. Enjoy.
We thought would be fairly give you some information that would really help, especially if you're going to be tracking a deer. One of the things that happens is when you come onto a track, in that timeline of what was happening, you have to determine where you are so that you can figure out what's going on. And of course, there's so many factors that determine how fast you might go, what you might do, that we got to break a few things down. Myself, whenever I'm walking through the woods or I'm driving down the road and I happen to see a track of some kind, I have to be, number one, a weatherman. I have to understand when the snow fell last, what was happening during that time frame, so that I can establish where I am on that timeline. When a buck starts his night, say it snows in the evening and then it stops snowing for the rest of the night, and he starts his night and he starts moving, he's going across the landscape, doing his thing. In the beginning of the season, it'll be different than during the middle of part of the season, and it'll be different at the end of deer season. So wherever you come along and join the point between point A and point B where that buck is, wherever you come along and meet that, it's going to be real important that you start to figure out where in that timeline you are, so that you don't come in too quickly or you don't go too slow and never be able to catch up to it. So I wanted to discuss that a little bit. The other thing about deer tracking, there's kind of two ways of doing it. There's the first way of following right up to the buck and then shooting it, and he doesn't know you're coming. And then there's later on, after you've jumped him and you've moved him, he understands you're coming after him. Those are two different tracking scenarios. Most probably 6 or 8 or even sometimes 9 or 10 out of 10 bucks that get shot tracking, most of the time the first time you meet him is when he dies in general. And it's real difficult to get him that second, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes 12th time, sometimes even years before you get that buck if he turns into a legend. So there's going to be a time frame that you're going to need to understand as soon as you hit that track every single time. A lot of times where we are, and I'm not sure if this is the case for you or not, but we have a really pretty good sized area to hunt. We have a large road system to hunt, and we'll take that new snow, we'll take the truck, drive down the road, look for a track somewhere where it might cross the road. We might go to a favorite spot where we know a buck lives, and we'll go for a walk through the woods. No matter where you come onto a buck track, you have to start understanding how long the timeline might be. You have to understand how far away the buck might be, also too, what you have for a buck, what his attitude, what his overall demeanor is, and you can use some of those things to help determine how far away he might be. Week by week, it's real important that the locations are another big factor. In the beginning of the month, during the rut, the bucks won't move very far. So this last season, we had a whole bunch of snow just suddenly surprise us in the first week in November. And it was a beautiful amount. It was nice and soft. It was a fair amount, I want to say 6 or 7 inches or so, which was just right. It was wet, sticky snow. And the bucks are still pre-rut. they're just taking their time, going a little ways, laying down, maybe make a little tiny bit of sign. They're not really super interested in chasing does because there isn't any does that they can really check out or that they need to just yet, but they are feeling it a whisker. They're still in the eat mode. Most buck, especially all the deer herd from September right through to almost November 1st are really trying to get the feed bag in. They're eating like crazy in the fall. They're trying to add on all that fat. So they're going slow and easy. And that first week in November, the buck track, your timeline probably won't be very long compared to the second week when they're running around in the chase phase, right? So there's this overall probably not going to be that far. That chase phase timeline will be huge. And you being able to get up to the deer and meet the deer is a very important thing. The locations of where that deer lives and the amount of space he has, the geography that goes around with that is very important. If you know the other thing about locations, if you know the woods, if you know those woods, you'll be able to better understand how far away he might be. Some of the blocks of woods that we're in are really huge, so we might have to drive a long ways around and see if that buck has come out of that block of woods. I want to, for starters, figure out which direction he's going, how far and how big apart his space and his steps are. If he's walking really fairly fast and he's going a long distance in a fairly straight line, that means he's probably farther away, and I have a little bit of time and I don't need to go super slow. When they first cross a road, and especially when I'm riding down the road and I come across a buck track crossing the road, first thing I do is get out of the truck. I'll take a good look at the size, the width of the track. I'll look at the spread and the stagger of the buck. I'll also, I love to go backwards on the track, and I'll go in 100 yards, especially if it's a track I'm really interested in, if it's a good big one, nice and wide, like Hal says, one of those skiers that are doing. That big, wide buck, if he's really looking good to me and I want to establish how far away he might be, one of the first things I'll do is get out of the truck, look at the track, look at the width, look at the size and the stride that he has, look at the speed at which he seems to be crossing the road. Those are important factors to me. I need to know that. And I also want to walk back into the woods where he came from and see how he reacted before he came to roads. In areas where deer get tracked a lot, they really get harassed. They will come to a road and they know that roads are trouble. So they'll pull up to the road and stop and look. They'll leave some steps where they stood there for a minute and had a look to see if anybody was on the road. Then they moved up a little bit closer and looked, and then jumpity jump right across the road. If a deer during the season does that, that's usually, and he has a good big stride, good big track, that is a more mature deer. That's a sign of an older one. He is being careful of roads. A young 2-year-old that hasn't had much education, 1.5-year-old, they'll pull up and just go right up. They won't even pull up. They'll walk right across that road just like it's part of their habitat, and they won't even care. There's a huge difference with them older ones. They're very careful. And when they pull up to an area and they stop and they check it out and then hoppity hop across the road, they'll do it where it's thick and they can go from cover to cover crossing the road. Them bigger ones will have those, and that's what I like to find, right? If I see where a buck has been crossing a road on a steady basis over the years, and it's that same one, and he's still alive, he's been here for 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, everybody knows about him and is trying to kill him, that he has a habits, right? A lot of bucks have habits, and I want to learn his habits, understand some of what he likes to do, and from now on, every time I get to that spot, I'll have a look and see if he's been across there. If when he gets into the woods and I start into the woods and I start following him up a little bit, he gets in, jumpity jump, and goes in a little ways, gets into a little bit of thicker cover, and then lays down some sign. If he's making a scrape, making a rub, he kind of crossed the road there, right? And now he goes back to a normal stride of walking and doing his thing. That's another good sign. He's probably an older one. When I see sign across the road, and he, like, there, I took care of that problem, and now he's going back to that rutting activity, especially at that later part of the end of November. That's another classic time I watch out for. Being a tracker, you have to be a weatherman. I want to know what time it started snowing, when it stopped snowing, when the warm weather came and the snow got soft. I want to be a weatherman and understand it. The other thing is I also, if I'm worried about the freshness and I want to understand how fresh that track is, and when I hit that timeline of where he's walking on the landscape, and I need to understand what fresh looks like, I take my track and put it next to his. I'll make that right next to it and compare the two of them. As I'm going all day long, I'm looking at that freshness, hoping that it gets better. Every bed I come to and I gain a little time on them, that's real important to me. So understanding the weather, what time it rained last night. I'm driving up the road, there's no snow at all. I'm looking down in the dirt, there's a brand new track. It looks crisp and sharp and it wasn't rained on. That's important information. So you end up having to be a weatherman. The timing is important. You are your biggest limiting factor when it comes to killing deer. And you understanding and knowing when those things happen is important to your timing. You need to be there at the right time. And Joe loves to say all the time, if you get that snow, you got to be there. Those killer days. The more time you spend in the woods, the better, naturally. But also when it's the best timing, that's what matters. When you understand, number one, the rut timing, when you understand your time, if you only have a week to hunt and it looks like Wednesday's going to be the best day for the weather and everything like that, you want to get up early, you want to get out there and go at those key times. So do your best to adjust your timing. There's some timing that you can't do anything about. When that buck came around the corner, right? When he stepped on a stick and alerted you, right? There's timing that is chaotic in nature, and there's some timing you can't do anything about, and you have to work with. It's like driving. You come to the red light, you have to hit the brakes. That's the way some of your timing will be inside of the woods as well. Paying attention to your timing. I'm always asking myself, is this the right time? The boys are a little late getting ready in the morning, and Jimmy's ready to roll. Jimmy says, it's just to adjust your timing. Relax. I'm like, we got to go. And he's like, nope, it's okay, right? We're just adjusting our timing. Being relaxed about your timing, too, is another important part of it. And, of course, rutting activity and what deer normally behave like and act like in different times of the year is real important. In week number 2, this is the time when things just begin to wind up a little bit. Those bucks are walking. The bucks feel this, we got to go kind of thing first before a lot of the does. And especially older bucks, their testosterone levels are a little bit higher. They're starting to feel it. And they'll lay down a whisker more sign, but they actually want to burn off some of their energy. Bucks are real energetic in the fall. That's part of their DNA. They need to move around. And they'll begin this, what I call zombie walking. They'll start in with this, I need to go, I need to search. That search part that's inside of their genes wants to make them go. And it's like a frustration level a little bit, and they want to start making that active. So they start this usually from the 9th to the 15th of the month, at the end of the first week, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, right in that ballpark right there, they begin moving, and especially the bigger ones will start going for walks. Now, if there's a lot of hunting pressure in an area, they will walk a lot farther. And they'll do it in a tight, small area where no one disturbs them. A steep mountain, a nasty swamp, and a lot of times they'll do it even if there isn't any deer there. They'll just start this walking. They feel they have to do something. Last few years, we've been seeing a lot of them right on these like cliff kind of bouldery, sharp sides of mountains. They're in there walking around all by themselves for like no reason. Just they're restless and they want to go. The timelines during that zombie walking period are usually really long. This last season, I want to say from probably the 8th to the 15th, maybe 16th of November, I don't think we only saw one buck bed the entire time. And we had snow for a few of those days. We never saw a buck lay down. Every timeline, every buck track that we took and their movement over the landscape, they never laid down. So they get into this phase of go, go, go. Now, they'll stop, they'll go like crazy, and then stop and just kind of stand there for a minute and then walk off, take a few nibbles, like Joe says, the highway. You'll see some of that. They'll take a few nibbles and then go right back to walking and moving again. As it gets closer to the 15th, and there's a possibility of a few of the does starting to be needing checked out, and they smell pretty good, they'll pull into those doe areas and walk through all where the does are hanging out. Every bedding area will be checked. Deer have that almost like dog mentality to go and sniff everything and go find out who's everywhere. The other thing about the zombie phase, this second week of November, when they're doing a lot of this walking, they're mostly interested in other buck. When they come to a buck that they know and they don't like him, they're rivals. A lot of times you'll see on the internet where a buck is escorting another buck out of his area. You get out of here, and they'll follow each other. This is the time when you can have multiple bucks in front of you. In my seminar yesterday, and we're gonna stream it, do our best to get that back on today. I've got some footage of a young buck on top of an older buck. Big bucks will follow other rival big bucks and try and straighten out their issues, and then he'll try and shove him out of his area. And just there's a lot of buck on buck activity. Also, too, younger bucks will follow or be along his track wherever he's going, a bigger buck. And I don't know how many times I've seen a big buck doing his thing with a little buck on top, walking along and seeing what the old man's up to. That teenager's following the big guy around. I see that a lot. It's as you enter your timeline of where that buck is walking across the landscape and you see multiple bucks together, now it'll be trying to determine who's on top, who's first, which buck is which. And we've had a lot of tracking two bucks together at the same time, going in the same places. This last season, we saw quite a bit of that, and I even got some footage of it. The hunting weather generally changes. Usually there's a little bit of a cold snap, and the fronts are a little bit stronger during that second week in November. That's another real time when you want to be out there and adjust your timing. As soon as the weather changes and it's colder, usually the timelines will be longer. So I keep that in mind as I come onto a buck track and I say, well, it's colder now. That usually means a larger amount of walking. So I'll use that to help figure out if I should really keep moving right along or not. I want to say this last season, we only had, I think, two buck that we caught during that entire time. That week there were 6 of us, and we only caught 2 of the bucks that all of us tracked during that time because the rest of them were just covering so much ground we couldn't catch them. The boys and I are pretty good at walking. We can really walk a long ways in a day. 10 miles is not unusual, and some of them bucks were going that far. We'd go on their timeline all day long and never catch up to them. And if they don't stop walking, even at a walk, a deer will just leave you. If he just continues walking, you will not catch up to him. So we need them to take a break, to find a doe, to lay down some sign, have something to eat, or just get lucky and come on to the timeline where we're close enough that we can close the distance and meet up with them. But that is a real difficult week to catch deer when you're tracking them. It's also a time when the bigger bucks activity is maxed out, like I've been talking about, and they're on their feet all the time, and you want to hunt all day on that second week in November. You want to be out there all day. Don't let up. Don't feel discouraged if you saw a deer and it ran off or something. Don't be discouraged by that because we had quite a few deer, even like with Kendall. I took Kendall Gray out last year. He was with me, and we were tracking a buck, and we ended up doing a circle, and the buck was right on the tracks behind us. Then went a short distance and turned off from that, and we ended up doing a complete circle. So it goes to show how they're not going that far sometimes, but they're continuing to move. And timed out. We couldn't do anything about it at the end of the day, but that was a nice little buck, and he was right behind us even while we were tracking him. So when they keep walking, they just keep trucking. A lot of times the security cover is very important, and that's the part you want to hunt during the middle of the day. That steep hillside, that swamp, that river bottom along the edge, the thickest and kind of nastiest cover where there's a fair amount of good sign. If I look down and I see deer tracks, big deer tracks, I'm happy because at least I'm in where they're moving around and I've got a chance. Say it's bare ground and you don't have snow. Hunting pressure, of course, ramps up. A lot of the seasons are well underway. Vermont, we start usually the 14th, 15th, somewhere in there. All the hunting season are on, and the pressure ramps up. Everybody's in the mood. The weather starts cooling off. In New England, a lot of our weather patterns are 3 days. It takes about 3 days to go from one weather pattern to another when the moon phase changes. So at the end of every moon phase, the moon changes, and the weather is generally unsettled during the moon phase change. So I don't care what phase of the moon it is as much as I care about when it changes over, because usually the weather is going from sunny to cloudy, from rain to sunny, or even having snow come along. I also want to string together buck sign in places where there is tight cover. If I'm out just walking along and I come onto a whole bunch of buck sign in fairly tight cover and that buck has just come through that area right there, I'm going to hunt real slow. I want to go real slow through that area and keep tracking him, but I want to go easy. If he breaks out or if he picks up his pace, if he's taking real long strides, I can go a little bit faster. If he lays down and then gets up and walks away, now I know I'm a little bit closer towards the end of the timeline, and I can adjust my speed for that. Doe areas become a lot more important. It is way more important. Where we are, our does are in generally like pockets, and the bucks will rotate between the pockets of doe. So as I do my scouting, which is sort of seasonal hunting, I'm out there actually hunting and scouting all at the same time. That hunting that I'm doing, I'm taking notes about all those does and where they might live, where they like to hang out, and I act like the buck I'm going after. I act just like a buck, and I go right to those doe groups and doe groups and doe groups and look for that big track. And when I come onto it, I'll check those does just like I was a buck. I'll try and go into their area and see if they have a boyfriend with them. And if I'm not finding anything from the roads, I'm not finding too much walking around, those doe areas are where you're likely to come up with a buck track. So I'm checking those on a steady basis. Bucks checking on each other and laying down sign is really not so big a deal during the end of it. And as you get into the actual chase phase, the bucks start getting a lot busier. And now they're actually finding a doe every now and then. Some of them smell pretty good. They're giving them a little shove. They're going into doe groups at night and splitting them up. You see them in the fields sometimes. The does are all out there. There's one that smells pretty good, and those young bucks are really going fast. As you get into chase phase, young bucks start going like crazy. Their speed is really moving along. If you decide to track a young deer, you better have some sneakers because he's going to go a long ways. And the differences in the tracks are real important as well. A young man will walk around, and the old one is straight and has purpose. He doesn't walk anywhere without a reason. Same thing with those deer tracks. Everyone who walks, the same thing. So each buck will have an attitude. He'll have a way that he goes about his business, and those young ones are like kangaroos. If you come onto a buck track and it walks pretty steady and fast, and then when it goes up a little bank, it jumps and jumps and jumps and gets like a dog. It runs to the top of the hill, the bank, and then it goes back to walking again. That's a timeline. You just go right ahead. Walk right along because he's going to take you a ways. You're going to want your sneakers on because he's going to go a ways. The bigger, older ones are a lot steadier. A lot of the bigger, older bucks, this is the week when the big ones die. In Vermont, our biologists were thinking, well, maybe we don't have that many 4 and 5-year-olds. They almost don't exist. Well, it turns out that they actually did exist. A lot of the biological check stations were checking deer ages at the beginning or the first opener of the season where they measured the deer that came in. The big ones are super active on this week. This is when most of the big deer die. The older 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, this is the time frame from the 16th pretty much to the 24th is also usually peak breeding. In November, the 22nd in Vermont was determined to be the peak rut. In the spring, a lot of the roadkill does, they before they had their fawns, if they were hit by road traffic, game wardens were measuring the length of the fetuses inside of the roadkill does to find out the exact timing of the breeding. They have a plastic tape measure they would lay on the tailgate of the truck. They would open up the dead doe, lay her fawn on top of that, and measure from the forehead to the base of the tail, and there were dates on the tape measure, and it could tell you right to when that doe conceived those fawns within just 4 or 5 days, one way or the other. So it was a really good indicator of when the actual breeding was actually happening, the peak of the breeding, and there was a whole bunch of it. The breeding season is sort of like just this one giant curve and then back down, and the second rut is just a little blip. It's really small. There's like this wave where some does will come into heat in the early part of sometimes even October. There's been a few of them, October 7th. So there's some that start and then it just gradually ramps up, and the peak seems to be November 22nd for Vermont deer. I'm sure New York is right there with it. Most New England deer are probably within a day or two of that same timing. Because the peak is going, there's almost like a little bit of a lull right around Thanksgiving or just before it where you don't seem to be seeing anybody. Well, that's because every buck has got a doe someplace. She's tired of being harassed. She'll lay down someplace and she'll lay there with that buck. They won't move too much, and all of a sudden there's this like little tiny lull where you're not seeing too much deer activity. The chase phase part of it is when they're usually moving right along. So you go from zombie walking into chasing a little bit where they're pestering and harassing, and there's not too many, but there's a few, and they start that harassment. As that part of it gets going, again, this is going to be a long timeline. Most of the time, if you come onto a buck and a doe track and he's going, I check on her speed and how much she's either trying to run to get rid of him, or walking slow and careful, and he's gentle with her. There's a big difference in how the two deer interact, and when I come on to a timeline of a buck following a doe, I want to see how she's reacting to him and if she likes him or doesn't. If she seems to not like him by the track, that's going to be a long timeline. I need to move right along. Most does will hold in a general vicinity that's quite a bit smaller than bucks. And if a doe is living on a side hill and she has left her fawn, and now I'm seeing individual fawn tracks by themselves every now and then I'm seeing running deer activity with no one seeming to chase them, and I come on to their timeline that way, I'm going to hunt fairly slow when I get into an area that there's lots of circling. If I hit a buck and a doe and the two of them are running and going about their business, and they go up on a hillside and then swing back down, as soon as they get into an area where there's a couple of back and forths, that's where I'm going to spend most of my time and focus a little bit more and hunt a lot slower in that part of me coming on to that deer track timeline. And of course, the fourth week, as you get in past Thanksgiving, we get into that section where there's less does in heat, right? We're going by the peak. There's fewer does in heat, and the bigger boys are back to circulating more. They've usually been with a doe or two, and now they're going a little farther. They will slow down a little bit. They'll tend to eat a little bit more, and this is another time when a lot of those big ones, you can catch them. The timelines begin to slow down and shorten up. They'll go a little less farther than normal, and that'll help you like crazy. The bucks will circulate to areas where they've been rutting right along. Remember, this buck that you're tracking has all of his tricks have never failed him. So whatever he likes to do, wherever he likes to circulate and do that, and as you learn his loop and what he likes to do, he'll be more catchable. You'll be able to figure things out a little bit better of what he likes to do. Calling, this is also, too, the time when calling can work really good. They're already in the mood. They've been rutting for a while. They've been listening to other deer. They've been doing a lot of calling themselves, and this is when that will work a little bit better for you. The buck sign will increase like crazy. He's a little more frustrated. Some of that testosterone, he's spent a little bit of it, but now he's had a little something to eat. He's taken a day or two of break sometimes. Sometimes they'll take it and just rest a little bit. When they get in those rest modes, that's another great time. When it's a short timeline, you can catch them and shoot them. And they're a little more likely to bed now. They can get these days where they're tired, and for a day or two, they'll just take longer breaks. Their bedding time frame will be a little bit longer, and that makes them more catchable. I tend to, as soon as they pull in to areas where it's a little tighter and it might be a good spot to take a break, there's a small amount of food and pretty good security cover. If you have any kind of elevation, that's usually where they are. They'll also have a tendency to be a lot more alert. They've been running into a lot other things. Any little twig snap, any little bit of movement, they won't be curious about it. They'll just jump up and head. They're quite a bit different of a critter. When you get into the fifth part, that the very end of the season, and you guys, your season here in New York lasts quite a while. The buck circulation will start to slow down. They won't go anywhere near as far. The deer tracks will be on top of other deer tracks a lot more. You'll have a lot more barnyard kind of situations. You'll have quite a bit more time when they're laying in the bushes with does that are in security covers. Some of our security covers in Vermont are like a posted section of land where they're not getting disturbed. They'll pull into those, stay a lot longer, spend a lot more time there. I'm looking on the edge of where they like to come out. They'll follow the deer trails that will leave those areas. I'll run to those. If I can pick up where a buck from somewhere else is still circulating and he comes through those are great places to pick that up, and they'll go a lot less farther. They're tired. They're eating a lot more. They're resting a little bit. The winter recovery mode will start in a little bit, especially at the very end. Warmer weather has played a big role. And lately, I'm sure you guys have been experiencing this. We don't get as much snow. The snow comes later. It's more spotty. The cold weather comes later in the winter, and it seems to disappear earlier in the spring. So that's made quite a bit of difference to the deer hunting. We're also like almost this perfect storm of a large deer herd. New England has had almost 14 mild winters in a row now. So the deer herd is big. Even Mass and Connecticut too. The deer herd is exceptionally good size. If we get a couple of back-to-back slammer winters, we could be in rough shape. Doe permits are probably about the highest they've been in a long time. So you can tell we definitely need to stay after the whole situation here and try and stay ahead of what could happen here in the future. I know in 2007, 8, maybe those winters were super bad for Maine, and the deer herd had a huge dip, and they lost nearly $2 million in license sales. So things changed like crazy for them as well. Any questions? When he's running, when a deer is running and you jump him and he takes off and the timeline extends, most of the time I don't wait around. If he takes off and he really busted me pretty good and he's moving, I'm gonna head right along on the timeline. Now, granted, this timeline will now suddenly extend faster. I had the first part of it where I caught up to the deer. Now I've got the second part where I have to start in again. I'll keep my speed fairly fast, and if he's running, a lot of times he'll take off and run through a wide, fairly open area. How many times have you had them? They bust out into the hardwoods and do a lot of huge jumping and going like crazy. Then get into tighter cover and slow down. So when I come out to these big open areas, I want to go easy. I want to look all the way out across it. I want to check and see if I can see anything. This part of the binoculars, looking good, taking your time before you now cross it, is real important. Now, he will extend that, and I will move fairly fast as with the best cover I can to keep up on him as much as I can. But I also want to give him some time to slow down, relax, stop worrying about me a little bit. And now, hopefully, I can close that gap a little bit. As they move across the landscape, they will use edges. Deer are animals of the edge, and they will also use what I call the island effect. You know, when you're bass fishing and you're going to make a cast, you throw to the treetop, you throw to the lily pads. Well, deer are the same way. They'll go out across a big chunk of hardwoods, and if there's, like, say, one giant maple that busted off and the top is laying on that side hill, they'll go right by that busted off top. They like these objects. They like to be near them, and they'll run up through and work their way up, and if he's likely to stop, it'll be near that busted top. So I want to pay attention to that island effect all the time. I keep that in the back of my mind. Any softwoods, any humps, rocks, shelves, any place where, like, there's a trail or a road and there's some cover near that, those are the places where they'll bed and watch the road. That island effect, that is a really good one. I use that one like crazy. I keep that in the back of my mind all the time. That faster track of finding a track, of course, the truck will be great, and it's fast, but it's also limited. Not everybody can do that everywhere they are. But if I can find it from the road and get that fast to that deer and start in on it, it's way faster than my legs would be. And that makes a huge difference. If you're doing it on foot, you'll have to want to go. Don't mess around. If you're just seeing small ones, you're looking for a big one, don't mess with that small one. Unless he's walking with me, I don't generally follow them all that much. There's not much point in following a small one. Next thing I know, I got him standing in front of me, and I'm back to making decisions again about whether I would want to shoot him or not. But if that's what you're looking for, this is the time. Picking the right track is obviously important. It's very important. And if you study and you understand what is a fresh track and what is not a fresh track of the same buck sometimes, a lot of bucks will reuse an area. You'll go through, and I saw his track go through this little notch right here, and he's been through 3 different times, and I've done my weather, and I understand the 3 different times. Now when I see that, I can tell which one's a fresher one and which one isn't because I did my homework. It's real important that you're able to figure that out and pick the track you really want to do. And aging the track takes practice. Practice doing that. I do it all the time. And, of course, understanding the features of which is what you're looking for and which isn't matters like crazy. Your speed will depend a lot on the deer's attitude. If the deer's attitude is slow and easy and he's just walking gentle, it does a meandering thing, you can take your time and go easy. That's the time to go easy. If he's got an attitude of, I just need to keep walking, and every step is the same pace all the time, and he never does anything different, and he holds a line for a long direction, he just keeps going in a general direction for a long, long time, just go ahead and haul. You can move right along. As soon as that deer comes up and does a double, you see this, side by side. And then it turns off to the side, like with Grunt Buck. One of our videos the boys did, that's a classic example. The buck pulled up and stopped and just took in his surroundings, listened. You do the same thing. If you're going to take a leak, right, you'll stop, look around, where do I want to take my leak? The deer are kind of doing the same thing. They walk up, they look at the situation, and then they make a decision and step off. If he's walking along searching and he suddenly smells a doe up on the hill because all the wind is coming down off that hill and he's cross-winding that hill. If he suddenly does that right-hand turn, time to hunt, time to pay attention a little bit more. Start looking for him. Use your island effect and look up there, figure out where. I like to stand back on the hill, look up there and predict where I think he might be, and then go from there. If I end up following that track and I predict where he went, I feel good about that. Being able to predict it is really good. His attitude and speed changes. That matters like crazy as well. And as soon as the steps are now closer together, if I come onto a timeline where he's taking big, huge steps and going straight, I'm going to haul. I don't even mess around. He's not right here. He's out there a ways. As soon as those steps start getting smaller, closer together, and he starts doing a little more meandering, if he steps off the trail and he does it very gently, he does the double and then steps off nice and gently, it's time to really hit the brakes, time to really look around. The wind direction is another thing that's very important. If he's going right along and all of a sudden turns and goes downwind, I have to usually look for him the best I can, as far as I can. I look for him to be right there someplace. If he isn't and I can't see him, I'm not going to linger too long when I'm going downwind with the deer. My scent is blowing ahead of me right down into those woods, and I want to be very, very careful. As soon as you do a 90 and the wind is going with you, be very careful. I like to move right along. I don't want my wind to blow down in there and mess him up without me seeing him. I want to at least get to where I can see him. Whenever I'm tracking or walking or doing anything, I try and keep, the way I move through the woods is to make sure that I have a shooting lane all the time. Every piece of woods, as I'm walking through, I'm picking the best place where I have the best vision and the best chance to get a shot or a sighting of a deer all the time. I don't want to get in a real choked up facing, I can't walk through it stuff. I don't like that, because as soon as I get in there, now I'm not going to see a thing. It's going to be fairly noisy usually, and I've got to go through and bust through. So as soon as I get in them real tight spots, I'll work my way through quiet, just as quick as I can, but I will not bust out into an opening. Human beings love to bust out into an opening. If the deer is in the opening and you bust out into it with him, he's gone. So don't break out into that with him. Pull up to the edge and look through, and try not to disturb the opening, and look for him in the opening. It might be a road where a fell buncher, right, cut some trees, a skid trail, anything like that. Before I come out into the skid trail, I look both ways. I want to make sure that he isn't just standing right up here and I blow it by jumping into the room with him. If a giant dinosaur jumps in there right there, you are all out, right? So that's the same mentality, and I try and keep that in my brain all the time. Look through and beyond, look into the spaces beyond. Wood density is another thing that changes the speed at which I'll hunt. When it's real open, I've got to go slower because there's so much territory to look over. If I can see the track ahead of me and it goes for a long ways and I can see it way out in front of me, I'll look as far as I can all the time, looking down the track as far out there as I can. It's important to me, though, to often look down and see the spacing as we go. Whenever you're double teaming, the boys and I have spent a lot of time. It's hard to track with another person with you. When you have two people and you're tracking, it's difficult. It was easier for me when the boys were little because I could see over the top of them. So I would tell them, you follow the deer and look, you follow the tracks and figure it out. I'll stay back here and I will keep looking all the time. One of the things about double teaming is you're doing this all the time. Two sets of eyes looking for deer all the time. But you are double the movement, you're double the smell, you're double the noise, but you can make up for that with the eyeballs and with practice. And after a while, as the boys got bigger, our boots fit in the same holes. We could just go right along. We practiced it. And after a while, you can get really good at it and move right along. The woods density matters because as soon as that buck goes from a dense spot to an open spot, he'll usually use an edge in order to do that. So if I'm following a buck, he goes up a hillside and he comes to the edge, he'll do the same thing. He'll pull up to the edge of the clear cut and he'll stand there. You want to do the same thing. Maybe a little deeper, a little more careful, but don't bust out into it. The buck will pull up and he'll just take the whole thing in a little bit and then meander along the side and just stay safe and check it some. So they're fairly predictable how they move across the landscape. And as soon as you start in a little bit and you see the overall landscape, just like a fisherman looks for all the trees that are down on the edge of the lake, and he says, there's one, and all the bass are on these. There's one, and there's one. Where's the best way to approach this? The sun is shining that way. My boat shadow will go here. I'll go down there, and I'll work my way up through this way. You're going to do the same thing when you're tracking that buck. You hit his timeline. He's walking at a catchable pace. He does a little easy looking. Now he feeds up the side of the cut and then works his way back into the woods. You'll be able to predict what's happening in front of you, and you'll be better at catching the deer. Maintaining the shooting lanes, choosing where to walk, very important. If a spot is real noisy, should I go walking through it when there's a quieter spot right here? No, take the quieter spot. Unless it's real thick and I'm not going to be able to shoot most of the time, and I think the deer's right there, I'm going to take the quieter spot, the spot that will cover me just a little bit. Not walking on the track is something that I try to do in certain key spots. Whenever there's an intersection and it's confusing, and I have a buck coming up and joining a trail where tracks are going back and forth, I don't like to step right on that junction, right on that junction of those two coming together. I will avoid that and start hooking my way up through. If I make a mistake somewhere in all this area and I need to come back to look at that and re-understand it, there's information I didn't pick up. It seems obvious the buck went this way, but in truth, he went up that way, turned around and came back. I want to see that. And I might have missed it. Intersections, I try not to step on that if I can avoid it, and especially with two people. When you're double teaming on a buck track and you come into a barnyard, now you not only have the deer tracks going everywhere, you have your tracks going everywhere and your partner's tracks going everywhere. So that's a good little tip that's sometimes very handy. The other thing, too, is as soon as you get into that barnyard situation, keeping your head up while you're tracking all the time. Don't be looking down all the time. The thing will run off, or it'll just be standing in the wide open, and you won't even see it, and you'll feel terrible when that thing, you lift your head, and now he's all the way out there, and he was standing right here, right in the wide open, obvious. Keeping your head up all the time and keeping it sweeping with big eyes all the time is very important, especially when you're taking out kids. It's important that the kids keep their chin up. It'll help them see deer. I was always saying that to the boys. When you track deer, pretend you have one of those neck collars on. Keep your chin up. Stopping and starting is when you want to be ready to shoot. If you're a tracker and you're following deer, when you start and stop, it's very important because that's when they'll run. If I'm walking along and all of a sudden I stop, just like a car on the road, the deer in the field will go, "What's up?" They'll instantly say, "Maybe I ought to leave." They'll become alert to you stopping. How many times have you been walking through the woods, you came to a stop, and ba-boom, 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 and off they ran? That's when you want to be ready to shoot. The other thing is if you've been stopped because you saw the deer and you stopped, and now he's behind the tree, you're behind the tree, you can't see each other, you're both saying, "Man, where is he? I heard something. It's right here. Why aren't I seeing it?" As soon as you take that step, you should be ready to shoot. Even just moving to a shooting lane, whenever you start and stop, be ready to be fairly ready to shoot. If you think there's a deer right there, be ready all the time. Keeping your focus up is another thing that you want to work on. That limiting factor of your hunting is you. Keeping your focus at the right level and trying to meet your deer when your focus is at its best is very important to me, and that's part of adjusting your timing. First thing right out of the gate, we get to Maine. I bring Ryan to the best, biggest, nicest buck spot I know. I start into the woods with him. We go in about 30 or 40 yards. It's broad daylight. Not real early in the morning, but definitely broad daylight. The two of us walk into the woods. We start up this little small skid trail, and I told him, up ahead of us is some beautiful hardwoods. It's only about 300 yards across it, and in the back, there's a whole bunch of red planted pines. This big giant buck comes down the side of this. This is where he lives, and he comes down the side of those red planted pines. He uses this runway up there, and that's where we want to start. So Ryan's like, "Okay, let's go." So he goes up in there. We're just walking right along. Now remember, this is the first day in Maine. The very first day, no snow on the ground. We've already tracked this deer several times each season for 2 seasons, maybe 3 now. We're not sure. This buck is old. He's a legend. Everybody's trying to get him. He is huge. And I said, let's go in here and let's start here. We get up about halfway through those hardwoods. We get to that red planted pines, and that buck was standing there. When I first get out of the truck, I tend to go easy and slow. It's easy to jump out of the truck like a dog and go like crazy. And if they're close, you ram them and you screw it up. Well, we jumped out of the truck and we were all enthusiastic and, hey, first day of deer hunting, let's go. And boom, right up here. And we get up in there and go just a short ways, and that buck was standing there. He was standing there, and he blows at us as we're walking towards him. And I'm in the back, and Ryan picks up his head, and that thing like this, and he blows at us and then jumps sideways. One of the biggest racks I've seen in years. And that thing jumps, and off he goes, and Ryan can't get a shot. When I first get out of the truck, when you first start your hunting, go easy and be careful. It's easy to just jump out on a track even sometimes, and the thing isn't that far into the woods. You just came onto it, and the deer's right over here. Sometimes you're at the end of your timeline. So be careful when you first start, and make sure you've got the evidence that says, okay, now we can go a little bit faster. Keeping your focus is a big part of your hunting. We already talked about the wind a little bit. And there's a whole bunch of do's and don'ts when you're on your track. Staying on the track, everyone says, well, should I stay on the track or should I make a swing? Should I leave that? And it looks like he's on this little hump and the wind's the wrong way. And if I go up there, I might spook him. So should I swing around? Sometimes it's a good idea to stay on it, and sometimes it's not. Most of the time, staying on the track will feed you all the information, but also, if he does a hook downwind and lays down, staying on the track will expose you. So you're going to have to make that judgment. Another thing is, if you do leave the track and you make a swing, and it's a swing in kind of an extra error, he goes up and does one of these, and you go around thinking he's there, and now you have to go farther to get back on it again. That will happen a fair amount of times. So it's always a stay on the track or don't stay on the track. And myself, walking on the tracks, I don't worry about that too much unless I get to the road. If there's a big deer crossing and it's the end of the day, I'll walk on all the tracks. I want to cover that up. And if I come back through the next day and I know the weather isn't going to change, and I go back the next morning and I look at that runway and there's new tracks on top of my tracks, I've swept it a little bit, I'll know if any deer came through during the night. So there are times to walk on them and times where I don't. Always looking for deer. The gun is most of the time in a position where it can do it, especially if I think there's a deer around. I work on my timing quite a bit, and I use my karma too. If there's a spot where I'm used to seeing a buck, he likes to go through this area right here. I've jumped him once or twice in this little notch between two mountains. I'm really going to pay attention. I'm not going to have the gun up here. It's going to be in my hands. Staying ready to roll at the right times is very important. Most of the time, they can be really close, and when they are, you want to go slow. When that crunch time, as you approach the end of the deer's timeline, and he has just hit the brakes and done a 90, and now he just came over here and took a couple snacks, and he went a little farther and took a few more snacks. You're getting close now. Now's the time to go nice and easy, especially if the wind is advantageous and you've got lots of time. You have the whole rest of the day to hunt. Go slow and easy. Remember, you want to meet him. You don't want to just keep slamming him across the countryside, and educating him about how you hunt as well. That's one of the things that happens, and this would be a great time to call as well, because every time that you get near him, you need him to make a mistake. And take your time. Go nice and easy if you think he's there somewhere. This last one where Casey and I were hunting together, and I say, you dropped him, and he's like, yeah, I know, right? That video, the two of us are going along. We have two bucks in front of us with a doe, so there's all three deer. They're all kangarooing right along. They run right over another buck's track. The other buck has gone over here about 25 yards and laid down. So they go running right by a third buck. And they're running. They're moving right along. She's in heat, and these two bucks are pestering her real hard. And a satellite buck is laying here, and they shoot right by them. He jumps out of his bed, hooks out this way. They go out around and come back towards him. They cross his path again. He goes out a little farther and stops. He has an ice ball in the middle of his back, and it's right in the center of his back. and it bugs him. It's flopping around on his hair, and he can't stand it because it's on his back, and he turns around, and he's licking at that ice ball trying to get it off his back, and we said, oh, we got $3 now. We go out and start coming back around, and we're looking for the deer, and the big one is after he's the third in line in this little choo-choo train of deer, and we stop and look over, and there's the other buck standing over here, and we're not sure what the scenario is, and we're like, well, should we wait? Should we shoot this one? And he's like, no, just shoot that one. That's good with me. I don't care. So he shoots that one. This was a lot of times one of those things where you'll have a time frame and all kinds of things happening, and you're going to have to make the decision of what to do. And sometimes waiting it out, this might have been a good idea to wait it out. But when you're in close proximity to a buck, the longer you're near him, the closer you are to him finding out you're there. And Casey says, no, I'm going to pull the trigger. And Casey did, and we got the buck. But it wasn't the one we were after, and that'll happen to you quite a bit. Whenever there are transitions in forest types, that's a time to pay attention. If I come through hardwoods and I break into softwoods, if I come around a corner, I come from woods into a cut, whenever I come to the edge of a road, whenever I go down the side of the field, those are transition areas where you're going to find deer. That's where the bass would be if you were fishing, right? So all those transition areas, move into them slowly and always watch. I don't know how many times I've broke from one type of cover into another, and there was a moose laying there. And if I'd have done it quickly, I wouldn't have seen it. Calling is one of my favorites, and mixing calling with tracking, hardly anything beats that. It's really good because it gives them an opportunity to make a mistake. So I enter the buck's timeline, I pull up to where he has done some feeding, and now he's close, and the wind is favorable. Now is a great time to call, nice and gentle. My first calls when I'm tracking are always very gentle, small ones. If he's close, I want to call easy, and I want to know if he's right here. Now remember, you are attracting that buck's attention when you call to him. I walk up and I call nice and gentle, and nothing happens. And I stand there and stand there and stand there. And then I see this little thing in the bushes wiggling. And I look over and I'm like, what is that? And I see this just little, like sticks, and they're wiggling. So I slide over just a little bit, and all of a sudden the ear and the eyeball. And then I get to looking at it a little bit more. Those two little sticks, those are brow tines. And he's laying there, and he's looking right at me, and he's still chewing his cud. And I'm seeing his head bobble like that. You're looking for those little tiny things that will be right there. Now, I attracted his attention, so he's wired. He's laying there, but he's not completely wired because he's still chewing his cud. But he's looking at me. And now I'm kind of stuck. I've got that right on him. I'm ready to go. Got it right there. And I'm saying to myself, oh, there's a lot of brush, and I don't have a shot. I don't have body. If he jumps, which way is he likely to go? I'm thinking about it. Meanwhile, he's stopped chewing his cud. He's swallowed. And now I've got to make a decision. So one more time. And I go crunch, 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 crunch with my foot without moving. Crunch, crunch, like this. He's expecting to see movement, and he's not seeing it. From what he can see, he's not seeing it. And then one more time. He can't take it, and he stands right up, gives me the shot, bang, dead right there. That has worked so many times that the calling when you're right in the bedroom, when you get right into the kitchen, as Joe says, right? You get right into that spot, that can make him make a mistake. I don't know how many times I've jumped them and called when I jumped them, and they went ba-boom, ba-boom, and came to a stop. All of that works exceptionally well. Anything else? We're just about time. I'm just about wrapped up. This is another scenario where this little small buck right here, he was bedded down. I called to him. I literally, in this beautiful conditions, I got here to the front row from him, and he jumped out of bed, and I couldn't even see what it was. Point blank, like that thing just springed right up in front of me. He went almost probably here to the backside of the tent. He only went about 50 yards. But when he jumped up, I called to him. He kangarooed a little bit and stopped and stood there. I bet it was 15 minutes before I moved to a shooting lane where I could look up and where he went. And then he was standing there, and he was expecting to see me. But I had grunted down the hill, and then I spooked him right here, and he must have thought I was a buck and went right out around. That could be the time when you kill a big one, and I hope it does for you. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate everybody coming, and I hope that was helpful. Yep.
Test. Hey, how about a great seminar from Rodney Elmer? In 15 minutes up here, we'll have Jake Bennett doing a seminar on bow hunting and what's it called again, buddy? Yeah, how to put the odds in your favor. So 15 minutes in here. Go get a drink. Go get some food if you want it.